Welcome to the importance and power of reading. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, your host. During some awful dark times in America, Black people were denied the ability to read, to learn how to read, to write, or to even own books. And that has hampered our communities up until this day. Now we're going to have important conversations about the importance and power of reading. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, and thank you for joining me on this special edition of the importance and power of reading. Today, I have Mr. Richard Ashby Jr. He is phenomenal. He helps authors get their books into libraries. He's done so much for our community. Richard, thank you so much for joining me today on the importance and power of reading. Would you tell everybody about you?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show. My name is Richard E. Ashby Jr. I'm the firstborn of my mother and father of 7. I grew up in Queens, New York. I am the past president of the Black Caucus of New York. I'm the past president of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. I am the president and founder and co-founder of the Pennsylvania Black Librarians Caucus. I'm the president and co-founder of Literacy Nation, where our motto is with literacy and justice for all. And at Literacy Nation, we advocate for independent authors, and we put over 750 books in the library in 2021 and 2022. And I just love being a librarian.
That is awesome and amazing, because being a librarian, you're the reason why kids and people like me can go into any library and get books by authors, especially independent authors. You've helped so many, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because you're doing such amazing work. Now, Richard, I have a few questions for you. The first one is, did you like to read as a child?
I liked to read, but I couldn't read. Okay, I was a poor student as a child. I never went to kindergarten. I went to pre-K. I went straight from my mother and grandmother's lap into first grade. I don't think I knew many. I knew my colors, but I couldn't count at all. I couldn't count, and I couldn't read at all. I don't ever remember learning how to read with my mother. Or father. First book I ever saw was a Dick and Jane book, and it was in school, and that was a struggle. See Dick run, run Dick. See Jane, see Spot, see Sally. You know, mom and dad, and I struggled, and I struggled all through elementary school, junior high school, high school. I got left back in high school. My mom, they wouldn't let me graduate because I wasn't ready to graduate, and so I got left back in high school. Then I went to college, and I didn't do good my first year of college, and they took me out of college, and then they sent me to a college out on Long Island, New York Institute of Technology, and I was like, oh God, you know. And when I got there, it was very racist. It was only 50 Black students on the campus. It was very racist, and I was called the N-word every day. And I decided to start beating people up. So I had fights on campus. And they called my mother and told her that I wasn't college material. And so when she came to the campus, she asked the dean, could she speak to me privately? And when we got into my room, she said, take everything off from head to toe, except your underwear. And I was like, what? And she's like, take everything off head to toe, except your underwear. She reached in her pocketbook, she pulled out a belt, and she beat me. She beat me around that room. My mother tore my behind up. And she said, don't ever let anybody tell me you're not college material again. You are college material, because she had poured so much into me, even though she wasn't there for me when I first started school, but all through school, my mother poured things into me. I learned so many Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, Miss Lloyd, everything. She just poured this stuff into me. And she just poured Blackness into me. And so when she finished beating the snot out of me, she said, pick a G. And I was like, pick a what? She's like, pick a G, pick a G. What do you mean, Mommy? Well, pick a G, what do you mean? She said, graveyard of graduation, pick one. And evidently I picked graduation. And that summer, I was a freshman, and that summer, something happened. I don't know what happened, but everything in my brain just exploded, and everything that I was ever taught in in first grade and second grade, Roman numerals, Pythagorean theory, and all kinds of stuff just started making sense to me. And I went from a 1.7 Q about, to a 3 point something to a 4, to almost a 4.0. My brain just. And when I got back to school, that for my sophomore, something happened, like I said, and I wanted to read. And I used to make my friends so mad because we would on Long Island, we would go to different campuses to parties. While everybody was partying, you know what I was doing? I was walking around campus collecting flyers of everything that was going on campus. And I was collecting flyers of all the meetings. And I would read all these on the way home from the party. I would be in the car, turn the light on so I could read these flyers and what's going on. And I would read these flyers, and then I would go to all type of meetings. And I said, you know what? I'm going to learn how to speak better. And I'm going to watch people speak, and I'm going to look at people's mouths and how they pronounce their words. And so I started going to every kind of meeting they had on campus. I didn't care what they were meeting about. They were meeting about flowers in the front yard. I was at that meeting, and then I would watch. I would listen to how they ran the meetings, and I learned about the Robert Rules of Order. I got that book and I read it, and everything they talked about, I would just started reading, and I just couldn't get enough knowledge, couldn't learn enough. And then someone said something that made so much sense to me. He said, "The more you learn, the more you're going to learn that you don't know." So if you learn how to hang a door, now you have to learn how to build a door. Now you have to learn how to grow the trees to build the door. Now you have to learn how to cut down the trees. Now you have to learn how to paint the door. So everything you learn, there's more to so your learning never stops.
Wow, that is amazing. So your mother and that strap kind of changed your brain a little bit?
And she had it changed my brain, but this is the first time I thought about this moment. My mother had an ulterior motive also. I'm a librarian, and growing up, like I said, I didn't like to read. And growing up, I grew up in New York City in the 60s and 70s, and we were Motowning it down. We were going to the discotheque. We was having a good time. And I had a friend, a friend, that he played for Benny King and Chaka Khan, and he played for all these groups when we were 16, 17, 15, 16, 17. And we would go to the Apollo and we would go see the Delphonics and Aretha Franklin and Blue Magic. We would go see them on Friday nights. And we had this friend Chucky, who was we call him a square. One Friday night he came, he's like, "Hey guys, what are you doing tonight?" We was like, "We're going to the club called The Creep." He's like, "Well, why are you going there?" "Because the library is having a program." And I said, "The library is having a program? Who goes to the library on Friday night? Are you kidding me?" And I made such a joke on this thing. I was like, just dog Chucky, just snapped on him. And I went home, I was telling my mom, I was like, "Mom, Chucky's going to the library tonight." And she was like, "Well, what's wrong with that? Why are you teasing Chucky?" I was like, "Mom, who goes to the library on Friday night?" She goes, "People who want to learn, people who want to better themselves." She goes, "And you need to keep," and I was like being really mean to Chucky. You know how kids are. She's like, "You need to watch yourself because one day you're going to be a librarian." Now, this is when I'm 15, 16. I'm like, I can barely read. And I said to myself, but not to her, I was like, this lady's crazy. Me, a librarian, that's the last thing I'm going to be. I'm going to be a Baptist minister, a congressman. I want to be a Baptist minister and a congressman.
Wow.
And civil rights leader. That's what I wanted to be. I was not going to be anybody's librarian.
Wow. So your mother spoke that over your life. And so I suspect that she was your major influence on your journey towards reading.
Yeah, my mother's my major influence on everything I do and everything I did and everything I am.
So
she saw something in me that nobody else saw.
exactly. And that's the power of moms. So you said you knew kind of the basics of reading, but you didn't really start reading till 11th grade. What did you think attribute you to overcoming your struggle? Because you talked about more so reading in the sophomore year of college. What really turned on for you?
I used to watch my mother read the Bible. She would read the Bible all the time, and she would say to me, "Get over here, let's read the Bible." And I was like, Jesus. And then I watched my father read. My father was a prolific reader also. So they're sitting around reading, and I'm looking at Dennis the Menace, and they're like, "Cut that TV off, get over here, let's read the Bible." My father had a book called Black Voices. You know the book?
Yes, I do.
I still have the book.
Wow.
And when
Mr.
I can't
Lolita
find it,
Calvin introduced me to that book
who?
many, many years ago.
Who introduced you to it?
Lolita Calvin. She was one of my instructors.
Yes, that is the best book ever. I have 2 or 3 copies in my house. So where I can, and I have, you know what? I have never read the whole book yet. I've had the book since I was about 17. I'll just read some of it. I'll read some of it. I'll read the same thing. I'm always in the Langston Hughes section and the Annabelle Temp section. So, I mean, it's a great book. So I started reading that book, and that really wanted me to read more, reading about Black people, hearing Black voices. You know, because I grew up in the 70s, and it was like right on. And you can't see it now, but I had a bad afro. You know, right on. You want to be Black. Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown. You know, Huey P. Newton. We had Shirley Chisholm in New York, so that's what we did.
Well, I understand that part. Mr. Ashby, everybody at home, we're having an awesome conversation. We've got to take a small break for a commercial, and we're going to be right back with our guests on the importance and power of reading.
Since 1877, Jackson State University has been training students for a life of service and leadership to impact our global society. Ranked among the best HBCUs in the country, Jackson State University offers 47 undergraduate, 37 master's, 1 specialist, and 13 doctoral degree programs. Whether you're interested in the arts, education, public health, the sciences, or business, we're here to take you from ready to JSU ready. Visit jsums.edu and apply today.
Welcome back. We're back with Mr. Richard Ashby, our guest, as we talk about the importance and power of reading. Richard, now, what was your favorite book as a child, and what is your favorite book right now as an adult?
My favorite book as a child, because I had never seen anybody Black in a book before, so I was stuck on Pippi Longstockings. I could not get enough of Pippi Longstockings, Pippi in the South Seas, you know, and then I was stuck on the Boxcar Kids. You know, it was Pippi Longstockings and the Boxcar Kids is what I was really, really, really stuck on. And then I read a lot of sci-fi. I liked sci-fi and time travel. But the first book I read with a Black character in it was Soul Brothers and Sister Lou.
Wow, that brings back memories.
You remember that book?
My sister is a kind of a Black historian, but she gave me my first books as children. So, and she was always introducing me to Black books. And so it's amazing that you say that, because that's a book that she was like, here, I want you to see this book. And it has characters that look like us, because I grew up in Mississippi. And so there were a lot of things that weren't allowed, or we weren't given, or we didn't have access to. And my sister, having moved to Detroit, would send me books that represented our culture. So that was really important to me. So that's an awesome book. So talking about books, what are you reading right now? What are some of your recommendations?
Well, I am struggling through, because I get mad. 1618, you know, I'm like, wow, what an eye opener, you know, 1618. I do a lot. I read a lot of children's books. I read a lot of children's books and young adult books as a librarian. I don't really have a lot of time to do personal reading like that. So I read the Bible a lot. But I love Jerry Craft. I love all things Jerry Craft. All things Jason Reynolds. All things Christopher Paul Curtis. Miss Woodson. I love Walter D. Myers, Omar Tyree, who just left the library Saturday. He came out to see me on Saturday. And I'm drawing a blank. This author is prolific. He wrote about Mouse. I'm drawing a blank. Myers, well, not Myers. I'm drawing a blank on the author, but
hey, look, you'll think about it, and before we go at the end of the broadcast, hey, you can tell everybody.
Yeah, he wrote "Devil in the Blue Dress."
You talking about Rawls?
No, he wrote "Devil in the."
Because that's the movie Spike Lee made the adaptation to.
Yes.
Wow, that's a good book too. It's been a long, long time.
Yes.
You're talking about my college days now.
And I used to read Iceberg Slim.
Wow.
I could never read Zane. I just can't.
That was required reading. My brother was a big Ice Cube Slim fan. That was his thing.
Yes,
because he wanted to be a hustler.
Yeah, he wanted to be cool. That was back in my Jerry curl days. So I went from Afro to Jerry curl to this. God said, "I'll fix you."
So now, as a professional, how has reading shaped your career? Because you're a librarian, but you do other things. How does that go with what you do for your occupation?
It is a major part of my occupation. I have to do a lot of reading. I have to read a lot of contracts. I have to read a lot of policy and procedures and write policy and procedures. I have to write collection and development policies and management policies, job descriptions, op-eds, column. I have to do a lot of writing and a lot of reading. It takes a lot of editing. No one, and I was under the mindset that the first time you write is going to be it. No, you have to write it, you have to sit down, you have to look at it, you have to read it over again. It's a major part of what you do. I guess I was 30-something when I went stone cold blind. I had an accident in the library. Somebody came in the library. They were selling drugs in the library at one time, and I made a decision to flush them. And that didn't go over well to the brothers on the street, And so one day I was walking on the street and they hit me in the head with an iron pipe, and I lost my eyesight, and called traumatic cataracts over time. A couple of weeks, couple of months. Cataracts took my eyesight, but I didn't know it was cataracts because I was going to the doctor and they never saw the cataracts. It was behind. There's something medical that went on with my head. And so when I couldn't read, I couldn't see, I understood the importance of reading because I would go to the restaurant or the simple McDonald's and I would say to my girlfriend, "What's that say?" And people was like, "He can't read," And people thought I couldn't read because I would always say, "What's this say? What's that say? Can you read this for me?" And so you're out in public, people are like thinking you can't read and they treat you differently. So now that I can have my eyesight back and I can read, it means a lot to me to be able to read. And when people come into the library and they're struggling with reading, I can sympathize and empathize with them because I know the lost feeling of not being able to read, not being able to comprehend. There's something in front of you and you can't get that information. You can't use that resource. So reading is so important.
Wow. That's an amazing story. And so you've overcome a couple of obstacles to reading. Number one, because at first you struggled. Now you had this horrific incident where you lost your eyesight, but now you gained it back. And so now you understand the magnitude of not being able to read and how it affects everybody in everyday life. Now, talking about reading, and as a librarian, what do you think the state of literacy is among our children and adolescents, and even our adults, when it pertains to reading?
We're in a crisis. We're in a crisis. Our children are being dumbed down. They're being hoodwinked. This texting, not even writing out full letters, just making acronyms for everything. And they're not teaching the children how to write script in school anymore. Our children are being dumbed down systematically. And we have to do something about it. As a people, we have to find out a way how to get our young people back into the fold. The 80s was vicious. The 80s, that crack was vicious. It killed generations to come. We stopped reading. We stopped caring. We stopped talking. I tell everybody that right now we're in a crisis with our young people. Not all, but we have a lot of great young people out there. But some of our young people in the inner cities, in the housing projects. I saw something a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Oh my God!" This Chinese lady was in the store, and her baby was in a carriage, in a stroller, a little toddler, 3, 4 years old, crying and making another noise. The mother reached in her pocketbook, took out a pad and gave the child. Now the child's on the pad. A couple of weeks later, I see an African-American lady. They're in the store. The child is up and the child is making a lot of noise. Mother gives the child a bag of potato chips.
Wow.
You know?
The difference.
The difference. What are we feeding our kids mentally and substance-wise? What are we giving our children?
And it's very, very important. And that's why we have these conversations so we can get parents more engaged. So when we talk about reading, how important is it to have books in our homes for children to read, for children to access, or if not books, magazines, or any kind of literature that they can read? How important is that?
I truly advocate for books and magazines in every home. I tell parents, they're like, I can't get my child to read. You know what? Tell daddy to put down now I'm going to date myself, it may not be the same thing. Put down the Nintendo, or put down that video game, and pick up a book and sit there. And you're sitting there, and he's drinking his tea and his coffee, and he's reading. And you're drinking your tea and coffee, reading. That child's going to want to emulate you. But if you're sitting there like this, the child's going to do the same thing you're doing. My mother read the Bible, made me want to read. My father read books, made me want to read. That child is going to do what that child sees. So if you're not reading, don't make reading a punishment. That's a big problem. You know what? Shut up and go sit down and read. You know, you're not going outside today. You're going to read because you've been bad. You know, you've done this. You've been. Don't make homework and reading punishment. Make them rewards. You gotta, and you just can't do it in the middle of stream. So you have to start this with your child first. When you first start training your child, make reading and homework something fun. Make it a reward. Make it, an accomplishment. You know, don't make homework a punishment. Don't make staying inside and studying and reading a punishment, a chore. Make it something that they want to do. Something that It's a lot of fun to learn, make him and be the best.
That's an absolute true statement. As you heard, parents, caregivers, the village, we need to make sure that we make reading fun, that it's engaging. This is the way that we're going to get our children to read more and better every day. Now, of course, we have to take a small break, and we're going to be right back with our guest, Mr. Richard Ashby, as we continue to explore the importance and power of reading. Watching the PIC TV network, channel 1000. Are you a company, business, or service that believes in social responsibility? Would you like to make a positive impact? You can. You can sponsor this program and be seen by 2 million viewers on the PIC TV network. Call 770-367-1268 for more information today. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle, the Computer Lady, and welcome back as we discuss with our guest, Mr. Richard Ashby Jr., the importance and power of reading. And he's been giving us some amazing tips. Richard, you talked about your struggles reading. And what I know to be true is that a lot of young boys and a lot of men struggle reading. How can we get our boys to read more and better?
I suggest that we give them books that represent them. Give them a book by a Black author for Black children, for Black boys, that's going to be representative of their experiences. Okay, I wouldn't give a young man, a Black male, Old Yeller. He ain't interested in Old Yeller. I wouldn't give him Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer. Not interested in. Not interested. I would give him something that a book like Crown, a book like New Kid. You know, a book, any book by Jerry Crafts. Walter Mosley is what I was trying to say. That's the name I was trying to get. Walter Mosley, Omar Tyree. You know, books by Black men about Black boys, so they can see themselves in that book. And even when you start out with young men, adolescents, so many of our books don't have our representation, but the independent authors do. That's why I'm pushing the independent authors' children's books so much, because they are representative of our young men and our young women. You have Naomi Dunstan White, you have Virtuous Cornwall, you have Shermaine McKnight, you have all these prolific Black women, and you have Mike, I'm just bad with names right there, but you have all these Black men and women that are independent authors that are writing these beautiful books. David Miller, a brother who is at the top of his game with writing books about Black children, boys and girls. So give them books that are representative of their life. They don't want to read Wuthering Heights. You know?
We didn't want to read Wuthering Heights. We had to, you know, that wasn't a favorite selection.
Exactly. You know, Little Lloyd Pomeroy. We don't want to read that guy. You know what I'm saying? I want to read about Pookie up the block who overcame a struggle on the basketball court. You know, come on, coming of age. Give me something that I can identify with.
So when we talk about this, what guidance would you give parents of both boys and girls to ensure that they read well? And I don't mean the North Carolina beating that your mama gave you, but how can we get our kids more engaged, and just kids all over the place more engaged in reading comprehending and reading well?
Step number one, get them their own Visa card. That's a library card. Give them a library card without restrictions. Okay? Give them a library card without restrictions. So many times librarians are like, oh, does your mother know you're reading that? Different age, ma'am. Different age. I went kicking and screaming over these street novels and the language of the street novels, and the kids, but this is what the parents are letting them read, this is what they're hearing at home. So not so much as the hardcore street novels, but let the kids read what they want to read. I don't know if you're familiar with the Lexile system.
Yes.
I don't do the Lexile system. No, you cannot read this because this is not, you have to read the book with the blue tag on it because that's within your reading range. Read something hard. Read something that you're struggling with until you can get it. You know, when I played football and basketball, I tried things that was hard. I tried basketball moves that I couldn't do. People say you can't do it, and I kept trying and trying until you can do it. Same thing with baseball and football. You can't hit a curve ball, or I'm going to keep swinging at that curve ball so I can hit it. So when you get a book, oh, you can't read this book. No, I'm going to keep reading this book over and over and over again until I understand it, until I can get it. So don't limit them on what they read. Don't tell them, oh, that book's that's too old for you. That's a chapter book. You're not in chapter. If they want to read a chapter book, let them tackle a chapter book. Just encourage them.
And I agree with that.
When they first started walking, you didn't say, well, no, you're trying, you know, we don't want to walk like that. You know, you let them struggle, you let them push up, and you let them, but you was there to try to catch them. And so to be there to try to catch our children when they're trying to read and they're struggling, be there to try to catch them. Catch them how? Catch them with a dictionary in your hand. Catch them with a thesaurus in your hand. Here's a book, here's a dictionary, and here's a thesaurus. If you come across something you don't understand, look it up. And then once you look up that word, find out what other words sound like that word, and then you go to thesaurus. So that's how you catch them. You don't need baby nets and you don't need seatbelts. That thesaurus and that dictionary is your seatbelt and your buckle when your young people are reading.
Wow. Now, I totally agree with that because, you know, I'm an author. And one of the things I do in my book series is we always go to the dictionary. It's so important. My mother gave all of us dictionaries when we were little. And you talked about having the books color-coded and reading by grade. That was something that I broke, a barrier that I broke in school. In the 4th grade, I wanted to read Little Women. In the library, Mrs. Shackelford, I'll never forget her. She said no. And so I went to the principal. We had the first Black female principal in our school district in Mississippi. And I went to Mrs. Wilson. I was like, I'd like to read this book. And Mrs. Shackelford said, I can't. And so had a meeting with my teacher, Mrs. Shackelford, and the principal. And she started pointing out words. And I started breaking them down by syllable, which I had learned in Catholic school because I went from Catholic to public school. And Mrs. Wilson said, let her read it. But here's the deal. You have to do a book report on it. I'm like, great, awesome. And that's what ended up happening. And I ended up being a librarian assistant in the 4th grade.
Good story.
But that goes to show you, you're absolutely correct. We stifle our kids, and our kids are so smart. We just have to make sure that we're bringing them along. Now, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, education is both now and it's our future. How do we help our children engage in learning STEM and be really effective in this area? Because as we know, we're in a reading crisis, but STEM is going to take us and elevate our communities. What do we need to do to get kids interested in those fields?
So not only do you have them read these books, then you give them activities that connect the books to real life. So you have the written word. Let's bring those words to life. Let's start bringing in, especially in the library and school, let's start bringing in scientists, doctors, engineers. Let them see the words come to life in a real life human being that looks like you. you know, and that's how you do it. Bring in some artists, bring in poets, bring in engineers, doctors, dentists. Bring these people in who are living STEM, children of STEM. And so when you tell a child about arts, okay, we're reading about arts, we're talking about the arts. How many arts are there? You know, the art of dancing, drawing, different, the art of what is it? Judo and all those the martial arts, all the arts, bring people in that can read that you can say this book is about this person. This person does this. We're talking about STEM. Let's give STEM a root, and that root is the person that's actually doing that in real life.
Wow. Now, parents, you're getting some concrete ways to help our kids engage. And educators, I know you're going to be out there watching. Same thing. Let's reach out to our scientists, our doctors, our technologists, our engineers, our mathematicians, and bring them to life in our children in order to engage them in STEM. Now, as a parent, and now you're a grandparent, how do you make sure that your children read well? What have you done to spur their love of reading and their thirst for knowledge?
I give them books. I have 2 nieces that every Saturday they are required to come to the library with me because I teach them how to be librarians. My nieces are in the 9th grade. My nieces can check in books, they can check out books, they can make library cards, they can do interlibrary loans, and they can read. And so when they walk into a library, they are no longer intimidated because they know just what's going on in that library. You ever go to a store and you say, I wonder what they do, like what they do behind in the kitchen in the restaurant. I wonder what they do behind that counter at McDonald's. So when you come to a library, you know, everybody in the library is trying to look so super smart. Good afternoon, can I help you? It ain't that serious. So I bring my nieces and I bring my family into the library and I teach them how to work in a library, how to use a library, how the library works. And then that gives them interest. And I say, you know what? Tomorrow we're going to sit down and we're going to order some books. Like, we get to order books? Yeah, we get to order books. So next week, when you come in, we're gonna, here's the New York Times bestseller and here's some book lists. I want you to look at these books and tell me what books you think we should buy. And I do the same thing with the kids in the community. I have a teen advisory committee. You say teen advisory, but we have all types of kids come in and they get to sit down and tell me, the library director, what am I doing good? What am I doing wrong? How can I do it better? And what books and programs we should have. So they have a buy-in. And those kids love telling me what I did wrong. Mr. Ritchie, last week you yelled at Jamar and it wasn't his fault, it was Teresa's fault. And I give them the same answer my mother would give me. Well, I caught Jamar might not have done something today, but he probably did something I didn't catch him doing before. So suck it up, Jamar.
Wow. So you guys have fun times at the library.
Yeah.
You're teaching them how to buy books. You're teaching them what to look at. And library science is so very important. It's very critical, especially now when we're talking about banning books and those kinds of things. So what you do is critical to our community success. Now, how important is it for parents and caregivers and just anybody to have books in the home to make sure our children have access to books and different types of literature or magazines?
Oh, so I'm sure you remember the World Book. Remember World Books?
S&H green stamps, baby.
Come on now. So listen, growing up, if you didn't have a World Book in your house, y'all ignorant. And those S&H green stamps, you get the World Books, you get that Encyclopedia Britannica, and that was our Google. You know, and you would ask your mother, Mama, how you spell Mississippi? Look it up, because Mama couldn't spell. So look it up, and you was like, "Am I humpback? I humpback the That crooked letter. We used to spell Mississippi, and we had to learn how to spell Mississippi, and we had to have books in the house. We had to have the encyclopedia. We had, what was it? Some magazines used to come to the house. Boys.
Well, you know, we always had Jet, Ebony, and then Life.
Jet. See, I wasn't reading Jet. I was going strictly to the swimsuit section. I told you I was struggling reading back then, but I could find the Miss July, right? Miss July, I could find that. I knew my months very well.
Well, there you go. But it still had you cracking open something.
Yes. And then I'm glad you mentioned that, because then you would see Sammy Davis, you would see Muhammad Ali, and you would have to read about these people. Lola Falana. You see all these people in Jet magazine and Essence magazines, and that's really, come to think about it, that's really what got me into reading. Also, I thought about that Jet magazine, and you would see Reggie Jackson in the magazines. You would see Hank Aaron and Walt Frazier and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell, and you see all these athletes, and you wonder what are they saying about these guys, and you would have to read that book.
But that's why reading is so crucial, because we need to make sure that our kids have a diverse section of reading. And I grew up reading Ebony, Jet, Life,
the Amsterdam News.
Oh, the Memo Digest, because I grew up in Mississippi, and that was the way that we got Black news. And I remember Mr. Odom, he ran the Memo Digest. It was our Black newspaper. I actually ended up distributing that for him, because he was like, do you want to distribute this in the neighborhood, be a delivery person? And so I did that as one of my little hustles. But I always enjoyed reading it, because not only that, they had a Black comic strip. And I was like, wow, and seeing people like me, because I grew up in segregation. So I really know the importance of making sure that we have not only materials, but materials that represent our culture.
Yes. You talked about the newspaper. One of the biggest, besides my mom, biggest influence in my life was my teacher, Miss Suzanne Young. And I was a paper boy. Had a little bag, I could ride down the street and flip the papers. And I had this one, I put the bag on my little Schwinn Stingray bike, and I would flip the papers. I had this one customer, she would make me make sure that paper was on her step. Like if it wouldn't her hedges, I would leave it, go sit on top. And she would say, you gotta get that paper and put it on my step, make sure that it has 2 rubber bands on it. This lady was a pain in the neck. Oh my God. She said, if you see my sprinkler on, make sure you put that paper in the newspaper in a bag. We didn't have plastic bags back then, but a brown paper bag, and you make sure that it's not in the rain. And this lady was a pain in the neck. So when I went from 6th to 7th grade, so when I went from 8th grade to 9th grade, most 9th graders did not deliver papers. It was like for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. But when you got to high school, you didn't do that. That was just not high school. So I went to her door the summer before I was supposed to high school, like a week before high school started, and I knocked on her door. Hello? Hi, Richie. What's up? I just want to tell you that you are the meanest lady I ever known. This is my last day delivering papers, and I'm so glad I'll never have to see you again. Now, what made my managed behind think that I could get away with that? And I walked away. I got home. My mother said, so, come here. What'd you go around the house and say to Miss Davis, Miss Young? Miss Young? Who's Miss Young? The lady you knocked on the door talking about she's so mean, and you glad that you're not gonna be her paper boy no more because you going to high school now. She said, my mama once again slapped that taste out of my mouth. Now you take your managed behind back around that corner and you apologize to her. And I went back around the corner. I apologized to Miss Young. I didn't know her name was Miss Young. I just knew, didn't know, back in the 70s, everybody knew each other, but I didn't. So I went out and I apologized to Miss Young, and I got back home. I said, now, since you got such a big mouth, you're going to deliver papers in high school. I said, nobody delivers papers in high school. I can't do that. Oh, you are going to deliver papers in high school until I tell you to stop.
Wow.
I get the first day of high school. I walk in class. Miss Young is my home teacher.
Oh my goodness.
I did, and my mother, so she talked to my mother. My mother says, get him to put in your class. Because when I was in the class, I don't know, when I got to high school, I sat down. She walked in the class. She said, good morning, everybody. I'm Mrs. Young. I'm your homeroom teacher. Hi, Richie. And everybody's like, Richie? She's like, yes, he's my paper boy. I was like, oh my God.
That's why we have to be nice to each other.
This lady watched me throughout high school. She worked with me. She did everything in her power to help me in high school, even though I was struggling. When I got left back, she stayed right by me. They called us super seniors, and she made sure I graduated.
Wow.
Now I graduate, and now I'm in college, and now I'm in my second year, and now I'm smarter than I've ever been before, and I'm an Alpha Phi Alpha brother, and the Delta Sigma Thetas are pledging, and I'm helping them as a get their stuff and everything, and so their advisors said, "Who's helping you?" And they said, "A guy named Richie Ashby." And she says, the advisor said, "Bring this Richie Ashby to me, the person who's giving y'all all the money and helping y'all get the stuff y'all need to get. Bring him to me because I want to meet this Richie Ashby." So they said to me, "Richie, my advisor want to meet you." I was like, "For what?" "Because you're helping us and we're pledging, and they want to know who's helping us and why you're helping us. You're an alpha, not a Q, or whatever." So I went to meet the advisor. When I walk in the door, this lady, she screams. And she just started crying. And they're like, "What you do to our advisor?" She goes, "Oh my God, Richie." It was Mrs. Young.
Wow.
And she just started crying. And she said, "Oh my God." When they told me that Richie Ashby helping her, I was like, this can't be the same little Richie Ashby from high school who barely got out of high school, and they're telling me how smart you were and everything. And so she got to see me, and
she got to see her flower bloom.
Yeah. So when you said about delivering papers, that's somebody that was really big in my life, Miss Young.
Wow. Well, Richard, this has been an amazing talk. It's been an amazing conversation. You're an amazing man and you're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
And I am so very honored that you had this conversation with us today on the importance and power of reading. Now, before we go, would you tell folks how they can contact you if they have a book for the library or some of the things you do in your organization, Literacy Nation?
So if you want to get me, you can find me on Instagram under Sidewalk Librarian. You can email me, my name, Richard E. Ashby Jr. @gmail.com, or you can look me up at richardeashbyjr.com, and you can reach me there. For Literacy Nation, we're going to be in Chicago in June. We're doing a readathon, 6 hours. We're going to be reading banned and challenged books, and that's a fundraiser. And all the money we make from the fundraiser is going to go to the Merit Fund. And the Merit Funds help support librarians and library workers that are being fired and put out of libraries for having people read banned books. And we have Jerry Kraft and Omar Tyree will be there helping us out with our endeavors in ALA. And Literacy Nation is now an affiliate of ALA, and we have our own cataloging system with the World Cat. So we're one of the few companies outside of libraries that have the ability to catalog our own books. Literacy Nation is listed as a digital library with the World Cat Foundation.
Now that is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody, now you know the power of being able to read, the importance of it, and how people like Mr. Ashby, they're uplifting our communities by making sure that we have access to books, making sure that our children can read, making sure that our library system represents all of us. Thank you for joining me for this presentation on the importance and power of reading, and I'll see you next time. You know what's going on in our society, book banning, and over 38 million children don't have books in their homes. Join me for some exciting segments as we talk about the importance and power of reading with my guest, Miss Melody McGuire, National Certification Expert.
Black life, Black inspirational stories, education, luxury, health features. Welcome to the new Black television, Pick TV network, where being in the Black is luxury, it's accountability, and it's seeing what you look like in the new face of television. Pick TV network, come join us.